better than not getting along.
Absolutely, it is.
Yeah. So perfect.
Okay, we'll just get started. First of all, thank you all for coming tonight to learn about how to become a delegate. You probably don't know anything about this process yet, right?
Well, it changes, right?
It changes, exactly. And for some people, they know nothing about this process and what we're even talking about tonight. So we're going to sort of start from square one, but I want to start by introducing our panelists tonight that we are very excited to have here who are experts on this issue. Let me start with you, Laurel.
Okay.
Laurel Price has been around Utah politics for a long time now. She's been elected as a county and state delegate many times and served as the region chair for the southwest area of Salt Lake County the last election cycle. Laurel also served as the district director for Representative Mia Love during her time in office. Currently, she's serving as the executive director of the Utah Republican Party, and the entire Utah GOP leadership team is very busy, along with Laurel, preparing for the 2020 election season. Laurel is the mother of 4 children and lives in Harriman with her husband, Tony. Oh, I'm sorry, Troy.
Troy, that's
That
it.
was
I won't tell him you said that.
Tony Troy. Jeff Merchant is a native Utahn and a lifelong Democrat. He practiced environmental and natural resource law for 6 years, both in private practice and with the firm Parsons Bailey Latimer, and in public service as an attorney for the U.S. Department of Agriculture. In 2013, Jeff visited an assisted living home in southern Utah that was old and dilapidated. Come on in. He felt terrible for the residents living there, raised the money to buy the building, and then fix the financials, the building itself, and the care being provided to the residents. Without knowing it, Jeff fell into a new career, and today he regularly fixes assisted living businesses, improving the resident care, the employee work environment, and the business's financial outlook. Jeff and his wife Emily have 3 beautiful daughters, Mia, Maggie, and Elsie. He earned his Bachelor's of Arts degree and his Juris Doctorate from the University of Utah. And in June of 2019, Jeff was elected chair of the Utah Democratic Party. He is excited to move the party forward through the whole state and getting Democrats elected in 2020 for many years to come. So welcome, Laurel and Jeff. Thank you so much for being here. Of course, we specifically invited people from 2 different parties because we're talking about delegates and the process and the responsibilities of delegates in this state can look a little different depending on the different parties. So I wanted to start by asking you first and foremost, what is a delegate and what exactly does a delegate do? I don't care which of you starts first, but I do want you both to weigh in because it can look a little different.
Yeah.
Do you want to start?
Yeah, sure. So a delegate is what I see as kind of the same as a representative form of government that we have, and that is where a delegate represents a precinct, in our case in the Republican Party, a precinct, a neighborhood of individuals who go to a caucus meeting and elect that person that they want to be their delegate to represent them. So, I mean, I see it as a lot of what we deal with on a federal level with our senators, with our representatives, and with our state House and Senate as well. And so the delegate has a very important job, and kind of a difficult job, right? Because not everybody that is in your neighborhood is going to see eye to eye on the issues or the candidates that you support or choose to support. And it's their job to properly vet those candidates, to ask questions, to take the input from their neighborhood and their neighbors that they're representing, and then ultimately to make the decision of who they will elect to come out of the convention and perhaps be the ultimate nominee. So it's a big job.
Okay.
Yeah, I think that, for the Democratic Party, it's essentially the same thing. I think that there is an organizational component that comes along with that. This is different, obviously, than being a representative or a senator in the sense that you're representing the party in your neighborhood. But in Utah, where we have a caucus system, we essentially carve up every single community and communities within those communities, and those delegates and precinct chairs become the basis of the party. So they become the people that really are ultimately the party itself, right? They're the base of the entire party structure. They're the people that we work with to get people to come and vote, to find people to run for office. Oftentimes they become people that run for office. And so, yeah, I think that's a pretty good description.
And eventually perhaps become party officers like the two of you, right?
If they're crazy enough,
That's
then
right.
yes. I was I was thinking about earlier today, the first time I was elected a delegate was in 2002. So I don't even want to admit how long ago
That's
that
a long time
was,
ago.
but it was a long time ago now. And so, yeah, and the process is it's actually pretty fun, particularly if you want to spend some time getting to know people that are like-minded politically, which is I think a good thing. It's good to get to know people that are not of the same political persuasion too, I think, but it is a good chance to get together with people that oftentimes you see eye to eye with, even though you might not agree on one of 17, 18 presidential candidates like the Democratic Party's got going on right now.
So you guys have thrown out some terms that might be unfamiliar, particularly to people who are not originally from Utah, where there aren't delegates or there isn't the same kind of election system. So why don't we take a step backward for a moment and kind of talk about what this caucus convention system is and how these delegates interact in this system versus another state that doesn't have the caucus convention system. So what is a caucus? What is a precinct caucus? What is a convention? So we have the foundational groundwork to that.
Yeah. You want to start on that one?
Sure.
Okay.
So Utah is different. There are a number of states. I think probably the most well-known state that has a caucus system is Iowa, because we hear about this every presidential cycle. They're the first caucus, and everybody goes to Iowa and tries to win in Iowa. And that will be the first, those will be the first national delegates that are assigned to the candidates in a couple of months. Or really not even a couple of months now, we're about a month out. So basically what a caucus is it is an opportunity for people to come together in a neighborhood, and they select these delegates. They select these people that will be the precinct chair. So you've got a caucus, which is usually, at least for the Democratic Party, it might be different for the Republicans, depending on the area, but we tend to gather several precincts together. Remember, these precincts are different neighborhoods that have just basically been carved out. They're just political divisions, and then those people all gather together, and they meet, and all of those people meet in their individual precinct, and they select someone to kind of lead them in that little precinct. So I'll give you an example. We're right here in Holiday. Patrice Arendt is the legislator in this area. So in her district, I can't remember exactly how many precincts she has, but she has lots of different precincts within her congressional district. All of those people meet up at Olympus High School. And for the Democratic Party, that will be on the 24th of March. All these people will go there. They'll come, they'll sign in. Based on where they live, they'll go to a separate table or a different area of the school. And then that group will talk among themselves, and they'll choose someone to be in charge of that precinct. So that's essentially what the caucus meeting is about. It's literally just getting together, chatting. If you're really lucky, then you go to somebody's house and get something nice to eat. If you're not lucky, then you end up at the high school like I end up in. And then you select the person that is going to lead your group. Now that person is oftentimes someone that agrees with you politically. And I'll give you another example. In Patrice Arendt, or Representative Arendt's district, if there's somebody who likes Patrice and someone who wants someone else to replace Patrice, then those two people might need to vie over who ends up being in charge, because whoever ends up being that delegate is the one that will then go on to the convention and vote for or against the person who is going to represent them on the ballot in November.
Yeah. So the Republican Party is the same. We go by ledge district. So I'll use Kim Coleman as an example because I ran that caucus meeting. Her location, it's at a high school generally for the Republicans. And it's, I don't know the exact amount of precincts either, but it's a large number. It takes up the entire middle school or high school. And And I would just also add that we have county delegates and we have state delegates. In Utah, the Republicans have 4,000 state delegates. So those delegates would vote for the gubernatorial candidates, the House, the Senate. If we have any Senate, we won't have any in the 2020 cycle. The federal races. And then also the state auditor, state treasurer. I mentioned the gubernatorial race. That's what the state delegates vote for. The county delegates would then vote for our local representatives, our local state house members and local state senate. And also they would vote for the county mayor, those county races at the county level. Something new this year that many of you may not be aware of, because we have just learned about this, is that our school district races, our state school district races, are going to be partisan this year as well. And so from the state level, when the Utah Republican Party has our state convention on April 25th, there will be 4 state school board races that we will be voting on as well, because they are multi-county. State school board districts are apparently very, very large, much, much larger than even the Senate district in Utah. And so many of them, at least 4 of them, cross county boundaries. And so those races will have to be dealt with at the state convention, and then in conjunction with the state convention, or I should say prior to the state convention, each county has their own county convention where they, their county delegates do their nominating for their candidates. And in the case of the Republican Party, all of that is going to be done in a really short window of time. So March 24th is caucus. We're the same night as you all, I guess. And our state convention is April 25th. And so every county in the state will have to have their convention between that period of time. Mm-hmm. So it's going to be really busy and a lot going on. And
so we're both going to have a really sad time of it, because ours is exactly the same. So it sounds like everything's about the same.
Yeah.
You know, and we'll have Easter in between that.
And Easter, yeah.
And all sorts of things happening in between there. So it'll be busy.
On. Yeah. So it's going to be a very busy time, but obviously it's very important. And in the case of the Republicans, we this unique kind of demographic we have in Utah, where most of the population is on the Wasatch Front. Our large counties like Davis and Salt Lake County and Utah County will all have their conventions on the same day, because that's just the only time they can do them. So for our candidates, it makes it tough, because they're having to get to all 3 conventions. I think actually there's going to be 4 conventions on the same day, because I think Weber County is also doing theirs on that day as well. So
that is challenging.
it is, yeah.
Only they could be in 4 places at one time.
That's true.
So Jeff, is that similar in terms of the state versus county delegates in the Democratic Party? And are they different people, or are they the same people in the Democratic Party?
No, they're generally the same. So whoever's elected at your precinct, you know, that precinct chair usually is your county and your state delegate, and then of course you select one other person. So each precinct has 2 state delegates and 2 county delegates, so it's essentially the same process.
Okay, so let's talk about convention for a minute too. So what exactly is that? And it's different in odd years than in even years, right? We're coming up on the even year, so let's start with even year.
Okay, so even year is the nominating convention, and that is the convention where you have the presidential, you have gubernatorial, you always have your congressionals because they're up every 2 years, and sometimes you have your Senate. And that is usually a very large convention. As I mentioned, we have 4,000 delegates in the Republican Party. And last nominating, so that would have been in 2016, we had really, I can't remember the exact number, but it was a very large showing. A lot of our delegates, almost, I want to say over 70% that showed up, which is really actually very good for 4,000 delegates. And of course, that's statewide. And then, of course, in the off year is your organizing convention. So that is when your party chairmen are elected, when Jeff was elected, when Chairman Brown was elected just this past May. So it's nice because then, you know, you have a year and a half to sort of get geared up and ready for the big nominating convention that comes around. So that's kind of the difference between the 2.
Okay. who can attend these conventions? I have attended them, and I am not affiliated with either party, and I think some people don't know that. Who is generally at these conventions?
So, I mean, obviously not anyone can vote, but anybody is welcome to attend our convention. I mean, I think that this is one big difference between the Republican Party and the Democratic Party is that we're an open party, meaning that anybody is able to come and participate. You don't have to be a registered Democrat to be involved in the Democratic Party's process. And so if anybody wants to come to a caucus night and just kind of see how it works, they're welcome to come. Certainly they're welcome to come to county or state conventions. Obviously, conventions where there are contested races tend to generate more interest, more excitement, more free stuff periodically.
Yeah.
You know,
Like what kind of free stuff are we talking
well,
about?
anything from a donut to a T-shirt to certainly stickers. They're really big these days.
Yeah.
Used to be buttons, more stickers now, but buttons every once in a while.
Swag bags.
So, yep,
and
all
swag
sorts of
bags.
things. I will not deny that many, many years ago when I just went for scouting purposes, like 20 years ago, I went to a Republican convention. And, that they had this was a big year. I think there were 5 people vying for 1 congressional seat, and came away with a 6-pack of root beer and like 7 shirts. So, I mean, people can get pretty intense about these
Yeah.
if they really want to. But they are actually quite fun. Every convention that I've been to has been kind of a party.
Yeah.
Have a great time. I mean, they're doing serious work. Oftentimes the convention is broken up into multiple parts. One of those parts is a time, in our party anyway, we have different issue caucuses or identity caucuses. So for example, if you're particularly interested in education, there's an education caucus, and that usually has teachers, principals, parents that are interested in that kind of thing. And then we have other caucuses. We have all sorts of different caucuses. And so because these conventions are where people are elected, those people that are running for office will go to each of these different parts of the building, wherever you happen to be, and they'll give their little spiel on why, they're going to be the best for education, or why they're going to be the best for the Latinx community, or why they're going to be the best for whatever organization that they're going and talking to. So that's usually what the first part of the convention is about. The second half of the convention is the voting, the speeches. There's always a couple of barn burners out there, and they give you the great speech because you're really excited about being a Democrat. I'm sure that you can't get that excited about being a Republican, right? But for being a Democrat, we get really excited, and so we have that time too. So that's usually how most of those, our conventions anyway, are broken up, so that you have a chance to get to know the candidates, and then you have the time when you're voting for the candidates.
I still have my Orrin Hatch cowboy hat from 2012.
Mm-hmm.
He was giving out cowboy hats, and that was kind of cool. But no, it is true with the Republican Party. We are a closed party, so if you're going to participate in our caucus, you have to affiliate Republican, and you can do that at caucus. You can come to the location and affiliate as a Republican and participate in that caucus night. Of course, anybody's welcome to come and observe, but only delegates that are credentialed, or caucus attendees that are credentialed, can actually vote. Same with our convention. We love to have Democrats and anybody else who wants to come and observe. We're getting ready in just actually a week or so to announce our location of our convention. We have not announced that yet, and so Chairman Brown will be announcing that very soon. It's a different place than we've been before, so we're very excited
No
about that.
sneak peek tonight?
No sneak peek. No, I promise.
Who was
him.
announced here first?
He could
No.
be the one to announce that. So, yeah, so we will be announcing that location very soon. But yeah, no, the convention is a fun experience. It's an important responsibility to be a delegate. One thing that we really try to stress with our delegates, or those that want to run as a delegate, is that they understand the time commitment, especially given the small window of time, and candidates are wanting to reach out to you. And this year, we're going to have a lot of candidates. I don't think I need to tell you all that we have, 5 in our gubernatorial race right now. We have CD1 that I think has 4 candidates in it right now, and we're expecting a couple more in that for Republicans. And we have Congressional 4, which is the #2 race in the country, and the #1 priority for the Utah Republican Party. And I think we have 4 candidates in that race, Republican candidates right now. So we're not going to be in short supply of candidates, and delegates are going to have a big job, and they're going to have a lot of people reaching out to them in that window of time. One thing that we sort of recommend to our delegates is that, because if they're going to be a delegate, they have to provide us with a phone number and an email. And one of the things we sort of recommend to our delegates is set up an individual email that is just for the delegate experience, because you are going to get inundated with emails from candidates. And sometimes people just don't want their regular email to be out there and to deal with that after the fact. So set up an individual email, get all that set up ahead of time, or once you win your delegate spot. And then I think that you kind of need to have it set up ahead of time, because on the night of caucus, they will want an email from you. So you probably do need to have it set up ahead. That's something we're telling our delegates, just be prepared. That information, if you want to be a delegate, it's going to be public and it's going to be provided to candidates. That's kind of the whole point. So
Is that the same in the Democratic Party?
Yeah, I mean, I think that obviously it's personal preference. If
Yeah.
you, I get so many emails that what's a few hundred more, you know.
yeah.
But yeah, I mean, I think generally the process is the same, and I would say that Laurel's right. Do that beforehand, because the information that we gather at the caucus is the information that we're going to use, and it'll just be easier for everybody if you just put the email that you want on there as
Yeah.
opposed to something else. So.
Yep.
So you were alluding to the time commitment. Can
Yeah.
you kind of go into more detail about that so people really understand
Yeah.
what this entails?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's just they have to know who those candidates are. And they have to. A delegate has to take the time to research every candidate, go to their website. All candidates have websites. Candidates do all sorts of events during that time. As I mentioned, when I first kind of started getting involved in local politics, I worked for Mia Love, and I worked on her 4 races. So her very first race in 2012, when she was kind of new on the scene and people didn't know who she was, that period of time, we were doing 5 delegate events a day. 1 in the morning, 1 midday, 1 afternoon, 2 in the evening usually. I mean, just so that delegates could get to know her, knew who she was, knew her positions, had the ability to ask her questions. And this is one of the really cool things about the caucus and convention system that you just don't see in every state. And I think Iowa, you see that a lot. Where are all the Democrat candidates right now? They're in Iowa, because they have to be. Because it's a face-to-face, look me in the eyes and answer my questions. And that's really cool and unique. It's something different. It's one of the reasons why I love the caucus and convention system, because of that personal touch and that ability to be accessible to the delegates, and you get to talk to your member of Congress and your senator and your governor, and that's unusual. So,
For sure. Anything else to add to that in terms of the time commitment
Yeah.
or the responsibility?
Yeah, I am always surprised. Every once in a while you get somebody that is a delegate and they'll be like, why are you calling me? Leave me alone. It's like, well, that's the idea. So, I mean, if you're selected as a delegate, I think that what you have to recognize is what that means in the system that we have, in this caucus and convention system, is they're taking hundreds and hundreds of people and they're still distilling it all into you. So all of these candidates are going to be talking to you. They're going to come to your house. They're going to knock on your door. They're going to call you on the phone. They're going to send you lots of emails. They're going to try and be your friend on Facebook. They're going to try and follow you on Twitter. They're going to do whatever it is that they have to do to try and hone in on you as, because basically you're voting on behalf of all these other people, right? So you become a voter. It's no different than, the day or two before Election Day when you have 20 phone calls come in asking you to vote for Ben McAdams or Mia Love, right? I mean, we all experienced that last year as all of this money started coming in to try and get people to come out to vote. Well, this is the same thing, except it's just you representing a whole bunch of other people. So, part of that time commitment is ensuring that you go to the conventions, but it's also taking that time to be able to know who these candidates really are. Now, some people, they know who the candidate is beforehand. They get, the candidate comes to them and says, hey, I'm running for governor. I want you to be my delegate. Will you do it? And, it's the guy's brother-in-law, so he goes to the, he's not going to have to do a lot of thinking when it comes to the governor's race. But that doesn't mean that there aren't a whole bunch of other races that he's also going to have to learn about, right? So you do have to make sure that if you're going to take if you're going to take the job on, that you're at least willing to do the job, right? I mean, I will just say on behalf of any candidate out there, a delegate who gets upset that they're calling doesn't know what their job is, because their job is to get to know these people and to at least take their phone call or talk to them for 10 minutes while they're washing their car or whatever it is that they're doing. So,
And really what you're talking about is that month-long period, right? I mean, you've got to go to your caucus and then spend that month getting to know these candidates, go to convention and vote on the candidates, right? And that's the even year situation. And then in the odd year situation, I assume you have to take some time to get to know the candidates for the party leadership ahead of the convention, but it's a little bit less maybe of a responsibility.
I think that this year is just weird it's just weird because of the national conventions, the presidential race, everything is kind of consolidated into this month-long process. Normally, it's not caucus to state convention in a month, right? Normally that process is expanded quite a lot. So for example, this last year we didn't have, we only do the caucuses every other year, but if we had the caucus on the 24th of March, we didn't have our state convention until near the end of June. So normally it's in the summertime, but because of the presidential race, because of a couple of other factors, everything was kind of consolidated. And so this year is different. Normally there'd be more time. The Mia Love example is a good one. If she's doing 5 events a night, I mean, there'd probably be more than that for these folks between in that month, because there's just a lot more work to do. And for these statewide candidates, you can imagine being in Cedar City and St. George and Moab and Vernal and Box Elder and Logan and Salt Lake and everywhere in between, in essentially 30 days is going to be tough. But I think that's it's just this is just a tough year to do that. But
So let's talk about what it takes to be a delegate. What are the requirements and what is the process to campaigning or registering or whatever that each party may require for a person to actually become a delegate? You've mentioned party affiliation, both of you. Is that the same in the Democratic Party?
No, so you have to be a registered voter, and then you're good to go.
Okay.
In the Democratic Party.
So
we're an open primary, or we're an open party, so you do not have to affiliate with the Democratic Party to be involved in our process.
Are your primaries open too?
Our primaries are open
Also.
Our primaries are open to Democrats and unaffiliated voters.
Okay.
So Republican, if you're registered as a Republican, you can't vote in our primary. But if you're unaffiliated or a Democrat, then you can.
Okay.
So.
Great.
And for the Republican Party, Republican affiliation.
Yeah, Republican affiliation. And when I ran for delegate, I kind of started, the nice thing about the delegate system is in this age we live in, like sort of this tech age, right? I don't know that we get out and visit with our neighbors as much as we used to. Maybe in the summertime more, but in the winter it's tougher. And so for me, when I knew I wanted to run for delegate, and this was kind of very early on when I started getting involved, I kind of just knocked on a few of my neighbors' doors that knew me and said, hey, I'm gonna run for the delegate position at caucus, and I would appreciate your support. And I had a lot of support on caucus night. They came for me, and I became a state delegate. And so that's kind of the process. And then once I became the state delegate, I set up a Facebook page, a neighborhood Facebook page, and I tried to add as many people as I knew, and then also sort of spread the word so people that wanted to join could join that maybe didn't come to caucus. In the Republican Party, we have this new thing that people can bring ballots with them on the night of caucus. So if somebody's planning to run for delegate ahead of time, and say they're a firefighter or they're a young mom that has kids at home, and they can't attend, they can send a ballot with them on the night. There's specific rules, and they do have to have a copy of their driver's license, the person that brings it, so that they can verify that that is indeed who that person is and that they're not at the caucus meeting. But that is a process that the Republican Party implemented a few years back, and I think that's been really great, because the bottom line is participation. More participation makes for a better delegate experience, and we also get a better delegate. So we promote and are working really hard on the party side to really promote caucus and encourage people to attend, advertising at the precinct level, just really trying to get people there. Because one of the criticisms we've heard before is that the delegate, the Republican delegate, doesn't represent the majority of Utah. And that may be true, and the way that you resolve that is by having heavy participation. The more people that participate, I think the different kind of delegate you end up with. And so that's something that the party has really tried hard to promote participation as much as possible. So.
Okay, so let's say I'm a person who wants to run for a delegate position. I knock on doors before I go, and I say to my neighbors, hey, I want to run for this. Would you come to the meeting, and would you cast a vote for me? Because how many of you have been to a caucus meeting before? Well, I'm impressed.
Yeah.
Color me impressed.
That is good.
Most people have never been to one,
Mm-hmm.
and most people don't think about going to one. And we'll get to this later, but how does one even find out that this is going on, right, in their neighborhood?
Yeah.
Unless you knock on their door and ask them to come. Unless they happen to be half the people in this room.
Yeah.
But once you then get to the caucus, what is the procedure from there? You
Yeah.
show up and you say, I'm running, or have you told them in advance that you're running to become a delegate?
So in the Democratic Party, it's pretty relaxed. You show up, there's a table kind of like this, there's a person there that kind of signs you in, and then they let you know, they verify what precinct and what legislative district, which usually everybody's in the same legislative district where they come to. So they basically sign you in, they tell you where to go, you go there, you fill out some paper just saying, this is my name, this is my address, all of that. So we have a little bit of demographic information in case we need that. And then, the people get together, and you'd be surprised. I think that for a lot of our districts, there are certainly people that come with the intention of being involved and want to do that. But there's always one or two where you've got 3 or 4 people that are interested, that want to be involved, but they know they're not going to be able to make it to the state meeting, so they don't necessarily want to do it. And so, I have been in one where I was selected as the chair because there was just no one else that was able to do all of it, right? So by default, I got to do that. Now that, in the Democratic Party, obviously the further away you get from Salt Lake County, the fewer Democrats there are. And so for some of those folks, they're a little bit fewer and far between. But the process is pretty relaxed. And I think that we've done a pretty good job, of making sure that when people show up, they're shepherded to where they need to go. In my mind, it's not an overly rigorous process. It's not complicated. It's actually rather inviting. We always have a couple of people that come and they speak, whether it's a candidate or a party leader will come. They'll just say a few words. So it's usually pretty relaxed. I would not say, I have been to some where it's kind of crazy and there are lots of people that show up and it's a little bit, there are some cantankerous people and it's a little raucous, but for the most part, the process on the Democratic side is rather smooth. It will be more smooth this year because in addition to having a caucus, we also have a presidential primary, as opposed to selecting those people at the caucuses like we did in 2016. I don't know what the Republicans' process was. I know that the Democratic Party's process was quite interesting between Hillary Clinton and Bernie Sanders, and given that you had multiple candidates, I imagine it was equally crazy there, which now we don't have to deal with, because at those caucuses you're not going to be voting for president. That will just be a primary on the 3rd of March. So
yeah, I think one thing the Republican Party is doing is trying, and we probably have larger caucus meetings than the Democrats do, just because there's more Republicans in Utah. But we've been working really hard at making sure our caucus is organized. We're already, like, they're having training tonight with our ledge chairs. Just making sure that the way that you run an organized caucus, it takes a lot of pre-planning. And we want people that come to have a good experience, to want to come back, to want to participate, and organization is key there. So that's something that the party is really focused on right now. It's just, and we'll be really heavily focused on that going forward until March 24th, just making sure that, you know, we have organized and planned and helped our counties be prepared and ready and successful on caucus night. So.
Yeah. People are particularly unforgiving for lack of organization.
Yeah.
And you have to keep in mind that at the same time, I am positive this is the case for the Republican Party as well, but these things are run essentially by volunteers, right?
Yes.
I mean,
Yeah.
You're obviously paid, but
Yeah.
most of the people that are doing the actual work of these caucuses are your neighbors. You know what I mean? And they've just decided to take it a step further and be a legislative chair and a little, a smaller group of people that represent a larger area, and they're the ones that are running it. So
Yeah.
it does become incumbent upon party leadership to help those folks know how to run things so that it's smooth. And I mean, anybody who's been to anything like this where it's not very smooth, people get frustrated. If it takes an hour to check in,
Yeah.
and you're a mom with kids at home,
Mm-hmm.
and your 14-year-old's watching them, you got an hour. You don't have 3 hours to get to the process. So
Yeah.
I think that organization becomes kind of key, and that obviously is our job as party leadership to make sure it works. And ironically, I think that every time what happens is you have some areas where it's smooth as butter, and then you have other areas where, for whatever reason, something goes wrong and it's kind of a mess. And you can't totally predict that.
Yeah.
Okay, so I'm wondering if from your experiences you have any insider tips to help people successfully win a delegate seat in their caucuses.
I think Laurel kind of outlined it, right? I mean, she did it the right way, and I find it really interesting that it sounds like that was your first real kind of foray into politics, and now here she is, 6-8 years later, and she's literally running the Republican Party. I mean, she might not put it that way, but I think that she's, at least with her executive committee, this thing is operating, and it's a significant thing. So I think that, getting involved in the delegate process and the caucus process can really lead to really fulfilling and enriching part of your life. But the way that it happened is exactly the way that that's how I would have done it. I would go and I would get a couple of friends and say, hey, I really want to do this. Will you come and support me? And, you go and that's really what the process is. It's no different really than running for anything. If if your kid has run for student body president, or if your, spouse has run for, I don't know, some random, it's the same thing. You just go out, you get a few people that that are willing to come with you and,
Support you.
promise them pizza after or something. Not that I advocate bribery in any way, but, those are the kind of things that, that you can do to get people to support you. And it's not, there are certainly races where it's a little bit more complicated than that, and it does depend on where you live. In the Democratic Party, if you live up in the Avenues or you live in downtown Salt Lake, you need to have a little bit more of an organized operation. And you have to keep in mind that you may have candidates who also have an organization and want certain people to be there to support them, right? If you're in a situation where there's a contested race, if you have an open seat in a certain area, those candidates are going to be working to get their delegates into those spots, which means now it's not just you and your friends that are going. It's the candidate's selected delegate, and both of their friends that live in that neighborhood that are going to go to try and get that person elected, so that when they get to the convention, they can support that candidate. So the other option is if you're in a particularly if you're in an area that's particularly, contested, getting in with a candidate, talking with a candidate, volunteering or helping with that candidate or throwing your support to that candidate can also be supportive. It can also definitely help you in that process, with the caveat that if you choose the wrong candidate, you know,
Yeah.
you may not get that spot.
Yeah.
Anything to
And
add?
I would
there?
also add, just make the decision prior whether you want to run for county delegate or state delegate, because there could be, you know, depending upon how large your meeting is and how many people show up in your neighborhood, you could have quite a few people that want to be state delegate or county delegate. So just, I would say, make the decision which one you want to run for, and that may be just simply a matter of what date you can attend their convention, because the conventions are on different days. So just make that decision ahead of time. And then the other thing I would say is brush up on, and many of you probably are really keyed in on the candidates and on like the races that are going on, which are really hot and heavy already. And once we hit January, it's going to be, you know, it's going to just really like roll. I mean, there's going to just be a lot going on in the political world. So brush up on those races, brush up on current events, and kind of gauge the mood of your meeting, to be honest with you. There's been some meetings that I've been to, delegate meetings, where there's been a pretty clear consensus that there's a candidate that a lot of people in the room are supportive of. And then other times there has been the consensus that, you know what, we want you to look at everyone. We're not really married to any one candidate in this particular race. We want you to just do your due diligence. So just kind of gauge that, like that discussion when you get there. To know kind of the mood, because it's different. It really is different at every caucus. So those would be some things I would advise.
That's great. Really helpful. Where would I find out what precinct I'm in, where my caucus is being held, when it's being held, and information like that? Where do I go?
Yeah, well, so the Utah Republican Party, each of our counties is going to, particularly the larger counties, are going to start posting their locations, I would imagine sometime in mid-January, maybe end of January, where you will be able to see, and that will be by ledge district. And if you're not
Ledge
sure,
is short for-
legislative
okay.
district, so your legislative member that, like you said,
Your
Patrice
House
Arndt,
member,
your House
whoever
member.
your House member is,
Yeah.
in the Utah House of Representatives, yeah.
Yeah, but if you're not sure, what you can do, because I just did this myself, because I kind of wanted to see how the process worked, you can go to the Lieutenant Governor's website, so vote.utah.gov, and you can update your voter registration. And it will show you your Senate district, your legislative district, your precinct number, all of that information is on your voter file. So when you go in and update it, and it's probably just a good thing to do that anyway if you have a change of address or an email or a phone number. Just to, go in and you can get that information off of that page. So then you'll kind of know what legislative district you're in, and as we get closer to caucus night, you can check in with your Democrat or Republican Party to find out where your location will be. And then, of course, a week out in your neighborhood, you'll start to see signs. I know the Republican Party will have like yard signs that we're going to be putting out. We've done that in the past. Your local grocery stores will sometimes have caucus night meetings, or some of the stores in town. So if we have it our way, the Republican Party, and I'm sure you feel the same way, we want to try to get that word out as much as possible so that you'll know where you need to be and where you need to go.
Yeah, I think that the LG's office is the easiest place to find that. You can also find it by going to the legislature's website. You can type in your address. It'll tell you who your representative is. You can go to I think that our counties have information. You can always call the state party, or you can call your county clerk. So there are a lot of different options for finding that. But the Lieutenant Governor's office, for most of us that like to just sit in our little, in front of our little laptop and not talk to anybody, that's the easiest way.
Yeah, that's right.
Okay, I wanted to open it up to any questions that any of you may have about this process. Yes?
How old do you have to be in order to become a delegate?
Good question.
That is a good question.
You have to be registered to vote.
Oh,
So, yeah, so you look like you might be, 22, 23? So you'd be fine. Yeah. You have to be an eligible voter.
I'm trying to remember if that's 17 or 16. It's 18.
18, you can
Okay.
pre-register to vote.
You can pre-register, that's what
Yeah,
I'm
you
thinking
can
of.
pre-register
Okay.
when you're,
But 18, okay.
my daughter is going to miss the presidential election by 2 days.
Oh.
Reminds me every day, but couldn't she have been born 2 days early, so.
Well, and actually, I think too, it's by election day. So they could come, if you're gonna be 18 by election
Yes,
day,
that is
you
true.
can come and
Yeah.
participate in the caucus, even though you're not 18 yet.
Oh, I don't know. I don't know in our party.
Oh,
That's
okay.
an interesting question.
Yeah.
I don't know, because really, from the delegate perspective, the process ends, for us, for state delegates, the process ends at the state convention. But I don't know, it's a great question. I don't actually know the answer to that.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure. in the
But I would
Republican Party,
say that that's probably a safe assumption, that you have to be an eligible voter as of election day. That's what my guess would be.
Interesting. Maybe I'll follow up with you on that.
Yeah,
and see
that's-
if
that's a
there's
great question.
Any
Yeah, that
differences
is.
between parties on that. Any other questions? Yes.
Are there any, well, I don't know exactly if I'd say safeguards to ensure that a delegate will vote according to their precinct? Or is it basically, we wouldn't vote for you again if you don't? I mean,
Like
Yeah, it's a
accountability.
great question.
anything
Yeah.
that keeps them to
Yeah.
really represent their precinct or just do what they want?
Mm.
Yeah.
In the Democratic Party, there is nothing locking you in. So if you decide, if you tell everybody, oh no, I love candidate A, but then, you get to the convention and somehow candidate B has convinced you, there's nothing that prevents you from switching that vote.
Except the threat of toilet papering.
Except for the threat of toilet papering, not getting reelected,
Right.
Yeah.
being hated by your friends and neighbors.
Is there a way then for constituents to be able to tell who their
Absolutely, yeah.
delegate
Mhm.
voted for? And is that the same in the Republican Party?
I think it's a secret ballot. I mean, basically, you're putting it at the convention, you're putting it into an electronic device. So you're relying on your delegate to give you the information of who they voted for. And I would say, same with the Republican Party, there's nothing that prevents or that binds somebody to vote one way or another. But it's one of the reasons why I set up a Facebook page. And this is where the accountability comes from the precinct level. And an active precinct will be really good at doing this, but you can't just show up at caucus night, elect your delegate, and then never say anything to them again. There's a level of accountability that has to happen. And the whole point of the Facebook page, we have a couple of really great precinct chairs that run good Facebook pages in Harriman where I live. And they're literally on those Facebook pages talking about, this I had a visit with this candidate and this is what they said about this issue, and people could respond back and forth. They could have a really good dialogue and discussion on social media about that, those particular candidates. So I think that it's incumbent on somebody in your neighborhood, your precinct, to follow up with your delegate and ensure that they're doing their due diligence and they know how you feel about a specific candidate for sure.
Is
So
that the same case with the Democratic Party? It would be a secret?
It's generally,
Vote,
and I'm trying to think, I think that there'd probably be, I think that there might be a way that you could find out. It would not be an easy process. I don't think that I'm just trying to think, I don't think that we guarantee a private vote. But honestly, I'm not 100% sure. I know that every ballot that we hand out has a unique identifier. The question that I'm not 100% sure of is whether that unique identifier is then tied to the person for whom that ballot was given. So I can't exactly answer that question. My guess would be that you're trusting if you say, I'll vote for you, I want you to vote for candidate A, and then I come back and say, yeah, I voted for candidate A. For the most part, I think that you're trusting that. I'm not going to say that it's not a private ballot, because I'm just not 100% sure on that. But.
Yes.
So how big is a precinct? When you go out and tell your neighbors, what is the geographical area that we're talking about when you go out and tell your neighbors that you're going to run as a delegate?
For the Republican Party, for my precinct, I think we have 3 streets. So I would say, gosh, this is just a wild guess, like 200 homes, maybe 150 homes. Some of the precincts can be really large. It just depends on where you live. And obviously, like in Harriman, where I live, there's a lot of Republicans because it's a pretty conservative area of Salt Lake County, and so we have a lot of Republicans that participate. So that's about how big ours is, maybe 150 houses. So, and like I said, some precincts are even bigger than that. Some precincts are really, really large. So.
Yeah, so they're based on numbers, not on geography, right? So depending on where you are, you could have a gigantic precinct.
Right.
For example, there are going to be areas in rural parts of the state where the precincts look a lot larger, but they're taking in the same number of people, but they're a lot larger. We have fewer delegates. I think we have like 2,700, 2,800 delegates at our state convention, so our precincts are a little bit larger, but in terms of the number of people that are in those, but they're the same. Are they different for Republicans and Democrats?
The precincts?
Yeah,
No,
I think
they are. I think that's something that the county clerk.
the county clerk
clerks
does
do
them.
those.
So they're the same
so
size.
That's nonpartisan.
But so the county clerk does it. But I want to say that they're actually maybe a little bit bigger than 3 streets.
Yeah.
And isn't each county different too?
Each county is different.
Yeah, each county is
Yeah,
different
each
too.
county is different. I don't know. You may have caught us on one where
We don't know. all
this
the
is the
details.
first big partisan fight of the night. How big the precincts
Our
are.
precinct's bigger than your precinct.
Yeah, that's right. I just feel like, so I've walked enough of these.
Yeah.
I've walked, maybe it's just that I'm out of shape, but it seems like they're more than 3 streets big. It seems like when I walk these houses and I'm going from door to
Does
door
it feel the
that,
same as when you're trick-or-treating with your
there you go.
Really similar,
Um,
actually. Yeah.
If we got candy every door instead of getting, handing people,
Yeah.
literature about our candidates might be different. But you might be right. It's somewhere around there. But, I am wrong. They are the same because that is determined by the county clerk who gets that direction from the state legislature. The state legislature defines how those are supposed to be built out, and then the counties do that. So they're the same size. But for some reason, I feel like maybe they're a little bit bigger than that. But it might just depend on the population numbers and how many people are living in those areas. So
And so can you find which streets they are so you don't waste your time going to the wrong street?
Yeah, I just found mine.
The
Yes.
precinct?
Okay,
Yeah,
so
you
you
can
can-
find
Yes.
Yeah,
precinct information is available.
Yeah,
Yeah,
once
If you go to vote.utah.gov, you can actually see
See your
your
precinct.
your district
Okay.
on a map.
Yep.
Yeah.
Like I'm in House District 26 in the downtown area, so kind of like Rose Park, Poplar Grove, a little bit of Glendale. It's a pretty big piece of real estate, and our representative is Angela Romero. She's our House representative. So she covers a pretty wide swath of geography, but there's also a lot of Democrats in that area, so I'm talking about the Democratic portion of it.
Yeah.
Right? But she also represents the Republicans that live there too, because she was elected in the precinct, right? Now, each county sets their own rules for their individual conventions. And that's different than the state rules. So you really, if you want to become a county delegate, you really want to talk to your local county party. If you want to become a state delegate, you want to talk to one of these two.
State party.
And so a follow-up question too is if, I remember when we went to ours, that we were at these little tables and sometimes there was only like 2 or 3 of us. I mean, I looked around and there were only 2 or 3 people there. It's like, so who's gonna be the?
Do you want to do it, or do you want me to do
wanna
it?
Like, I'm
Yeah.
just here to
Yeah.
observe.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But, some tables were empty.
Yeah.
So then what happens? Who votes?
So I'm going to take a wild, so where do you live?
Bountiful.
Okay, so I'm going to take a wild guess that you went to a Democratic.
Yeah.
I'm not trying to out you or anything. But if you were in Bountiful, that may have been the case. I don't know if that would have happened in a Republican primary or a Republican
No,
caucus
it
in
was
Bountiful.
crazy that year.
Not
I had a
Bountiful.
friend.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh man, not Bountiful.
So so that does happen. So there are a couple of things that happen in that case. So in a case where no one is elected as a delegate, then the legislative chair, so each, you've got all these precincts, those precincts make up a legislative district, right? And all of those precinct leaders elect one of themselves to be the legislative district, to run the district. And so that individual then has, in our party anyway, has the ability to assign an individual to that precinct. So, for example, if we
Like
have,
jury duty?
yeah, well, not quite like
Or
jury
like
duty,
everybody?
but let's put it this way: if you have, say, 3 people in precinct 1, all of whom want to be delegates, but only one of them can be,
Okay.
and you have nobody in precinct 2 and precinct 3,
Mhm.
then those people can be assigned to those precincts so that they get an opportunity to participate. Somebody is there to represent them, but at the end of the day, if nobody was really willing to show up to participate in that precinct, there's not going to be a whole lot of accountability for that person anyway. Obviously, the goal is to have someone from each of those precincts, representing the area, but it doesn't always happen that way. So,
The idea is that you're representing your neighbors, but if your neighbors tell you what they want,
yeah,
you have to just kind of vote your conscience.
yeah.
And we're structured the same way, precinct chair, ledge chair, and then above that for us is region chair, which is what I was in the last cycle, and I think I had 5 ledge districts in the region, and my region was the Southwest region, so that's South Jordan, Riverton, Harriman, Bluffdale, that area out there. So we have 6 regions in Salt Lake County, just to kind of put that into perspective, and then of course the legislative districts and precincts. So when we have 2,100 precincts, roughly, on statewide for the Republican Party.
And that would be the same as.
You had another question.
Obviously, there's a set number of people per geographic area, precinct, whatever. Are there additional delegates to represent young people or minorities or that kind of thing, or is it just that neighborhood representation?
So I think it's just the neighborhood representation, but that's a really good question. So there are some delegates that are, the terminology is escaping me, automatics, what do we call those?
I don't know. I mean, you can.
Sorry.
I mean,
But-
we have a number of different types of things in the Democratic Party. So.
But it's based on, like a region chair. When I was a region chair, I had automatic delegate status, state and county. But that was because I was doing a lot of work, like spending a lot of time. So, but we do have auxiliaries in the Republican Party. We have, obviously women's groups that are recognized auxiliaries. We have a Latino group that's a recognized auxiliary. We have the Black Republican Assembly, that's an auxiliary group. We have Utah College Republicans, and they're all auxiliaries of the Republican Party, and they're part of our executive committee. And they are also, in some cases, they have a vote on our central committee, our state central committee, which makes a lot of decision-making for the Republican Party. So that's kind of how we bring them in and have them, be part of the process.
Yeah, so you're getting, it's a little bit more complex there, but it's essentially the same in the Democratic Party. There's the Democratic Party, like the Republican Party, is the higher level apparatus is this organization called the Central Committee, which is made up of people in different legislative districts, as well as specific, we call them caucuses, which is confusing, but they're issue or identity caucuses. So Latinx community, we have the Black caucus, we have environmental caucus, we've got all sorts of different caucuses. Those people then elect people to be on our executive committee, which is just a smaller group that kind of runs the day-to-day operations of the party. So.
Yes.
Is it a conflict of interest to run for delegate if you're already doing a lot of legislative work for like a volunteer organization?
Not in our party. As long as you're legislative, as long as you're doing work. Where I would see that as a conflict of interest is not in terms of the party, but in terms of whoever you're doing the other work for. Mm-hmm. So, for example, if you advocate on behalf of the disabled community and you come to the Democratic convention, you want to be part of the Democratic Party, that advocacy organization may say, we don't really want someone who's being overtly partisan to be involved. But I can't think of anything on the Democratic Party. The only thing that's really going to be frowned upon is if you're a Republican and you're or you're a registered member of a different political party. That's going to be frowned upon more than being involved in, for example, the only thing that came to my mind was being involved in the disabled community, or being involved in the whatever the organization might be. So.
Yeah, I don't think that's a disadvantage at all. In fact, I have a friend who lives down the street from me that's never been politically involved at all. And she called me prior to the 2018 caucus and said, hey, I'm going to run as a county delegate, because she was a principal, and the PTA had encouraged as many principals as possible to run as a county delegate and just sort of experience that process, and obviously support public education and public education candidates. And so she ran as a county delegate, didn't have a clue what she was doing, and she called me and I said, this is what you need to do, and she did a lot of some of the same stuff that I did. I had an awesome, excellent experience. It was a lot of time, she said, but she was grateful for that opportunity, so I don't think that's a problem at all. I mean, I think sometimes those kinds of people make the best kind of delegates, because you know the right questions to ask, you're well educated on various issues, and I think that's great.
Well, the truth is, all politics is local, right?
Right.
I got involved when I moved into Poplar Grove, because the street, I live on Indiana Avenue, which is 8 South, for those of you who want West Side dwellers. And it's one of the only thoroughfares from linking the east side all the way to Redwood Road. And so our roadway gets a lot of traffic, and a lot of people don't obey traffic laws. And so I got involved in my community council just based on, I would like more traffic abatement, please, so that my dog doesn't get run over. And then from that, it became, well, I'll get interested in the next level, and now I'm involved in the county and also now up in the state party. So it starts with somebody who has something to say. And then if you're the person who, takes one step forward, you find that you look around and a bunch of people have taken a step back, and you're the only one there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So it really is as much as you want to be involved.
One other thing I wanted to just put out there too, our new leadership, Derek Brown and his leadership team, when they came in, they were just elected in May, and they recognized and did some research and discovered that our delegates in the Republican Party, not very many of them are under 30 years old. Very few. I can't remember the exact percentage, but it was really, really small. And so they started this initiative called 30 Under 30, where they are trying to actively promote statewide younger delegates, younger participation, so that, because that brings it just brings a different mindset, right? It's a different demographic with different points of view, and so that was something that we recognized, and the leadership team recognized right away that they needed to really make an effort. So on our website, we have a 30 Under 30 tab, and that's something that Erin, our vice president, goes around and does a lot of educating on with county chairs, and just pushing out the younger vote to the caucus for Republicans.
We have no problem having people under 30. I would say the Democratic Party is remarkably diverse. We've got a great group of younger folks, great group of older folks, great group of people right in the middle. So it's a great idea, though.
Yeah.
Maybe we'll do a 30 under 30.
Yeah.
Get even more people under 30. But we have a lot of young people that are involved, and a lot of so-called millennials. Not that I want to label anybody. I think that they're just as involved as some of the older folks.
And it's the Young Democrats of Utah.
Yeah, yeah, Young Democrats of Utah. So yeah, we don't necessarily have that problem, but I think it's great, and obviously doing anything to get more people involved is a good thing. I mean, I certainly wouldn't say we have enough young people involved, but we don't have enough middle-aged people involved or older people involved either. So the more we can get involved, the better.
The more the merrier. On that note, I want to thank you both for being here to teach people how one of these great ways that you can get involved by being a delegate, or by supporting a delegate, or by just coming and witnessing the process in action. At Action Utah, one of the many things that we do is educate voters about how to participate in elections, community members about how to participate in civic engagement in general. So let me just go over a couple of the resources that we have at Action Utah around elections, and these are free resources available to the community. We do have, in case you forget anything that these wonderful people said tonight, you will find this video on our Facebook page. We also have a resource called How to Become a Delegate on our website at actionutah.org. We have a resource on how elections work. Every year we are doing a voter pledge, so we have our 2020 voter pledge up and running, which is an opportunity for people to really just join an email list so that you will get reminders about what is happening at what time for election season, and you won't miss a vote, you won't miss your chance to register to vote. We do a voter guide every year. We have a voter handbook to teach you how to participate in elections, resources on how to register to vote, all kinds of stuff at our education center. In addition, we have a lot of events that we host throughout the year, like this event tonight. The legislative session is coming up in January, and so we have events coming up on specific issues, on legislative previews. We do lobby days once a week at the state capitol to teach people how to be a community lobbyist on any issue that matters to you. And a number of other events to help people really engage in a number of ways. So you can find those listed on our website, on our events page, and also on our Facebook page. So with that, I just want to let people know that they can access those kinds of resources anytime. And thank you again for coming tonight. And thank you both, Jeff and Laurel, for being here to teach us more about the process.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Great.